Welcome to this retrospective / review for the video game Sin and Punishment, or as it was known in Japanese when it originally came out, was Sumi Tobatsu with a subtext of Hoshi no Keishusha. If I said that right, I may not have. My Japanese is really, really bad. But I do know the word Hoshi stands for star, and so I believe that subtext stands for successor of the stars, if Google Translate is to be believed, and it's probably right. And because, I want to mention the Japanese name for this because when you go looking for, like on the Retro Achievements website, where this game is listed, you won't find it listed under Sin and Punishment. You'll find it under the Japanese name initially because it came out in Japan and only Japan originally on the Nintendo 64. But here in the West, when we finally did get access to the game, it was known as Sin and Punishment. And of course, its sequel, which we did get as well, was known as Sin and Punishment for us. So that's neither here nor there. I just want to talk a little bit about setting the game up and the options available to you currently, and give a brief comparison of them. So we'll start with what is available today. What is available today is the Nintendo Switch version of this, using the Nintendo Switch Online and Expansion Pass, where you can basically emulate it there via the emulator there with the Expansion Pass. Now, the emulation is very different on the Switch compared to what you're seeing here in the background. All they really translated were the menus. And so the menus are the only thing that you'll actually see in English. The rest of the game, the subtitles are all in Japanese. But like the original Japanese version of this game, the voice acting and everything is in English. So that actually wasn't changed, so they didn't have to record a new voice track or anything of that nature. It was in English, but everything was subtitled in Japanese. The way that I did it, and I feel that probably most people should play the game, is to emulate it on, say, your PC or any other device where you can have access to something like RetroArch, basically, or any other good N64 emulator. RetroArch works very well. Now, initially, I was a little hesitant about certain things with this game because I had heard there was a texture patch that was actually better when it came to emulating things if you had issues with the game crashing. Fortunately, it turned out that wasn't really the case. I mean, there was some finagling I had to do to get things working, but for the most part, getting this working with the full English translation patch, didn't need to do any texture packs or anything of that nature. It worked just fine. The main issue is you have to change the CPU from what I believe is dynamic recompiler to pure interpreter. It was easier for me to set that up in parallel N64, that core, than it was in Mupen 64 Plus, because Mupen would basically just crash when you try to run the game, and so you wouldn't be able to go in and change the options. What I did was I was able to change that with the text file. There's an options text file. You can go in there and change it to pure interpreter. Then after I did that, the game would launch just fine. And so it worked pretty well, I'd say. From a visual perspective, the Mupen 64 Plus is better because you can use the parallel, which is kind of odd from a naming convention, but you can use the parallel graphics plugin and RSP plugin, and that works under Mupen 64 Plus, but I couldn't get it to work under parallel N64, oddly enough. So visually, that's probably the best way of playing the game. Now, what you're seeing here in the background is me upscaling it 4 times and using a downsampling of 1/4. So it has the same resolution that you would see on, say, the N64, but it has a lot better anti-aliasing and things of that nature to make it look better. So it does look pretty good, in my personal opinion, compared to other options. Now, the Nintendo Switch version of the game probably looks okay. I'm guessing in handheld mode. In fact, that's the only way I tested it out was in handheld mode, but I didn't really delve too much into the game. But I will say that Nintendo, for the most part, when it comes to emulation, they're known for doing very bare bones emulation. So from a visual perspective, if you want to see things, a little bit better quality, then again, emulating it this way is probably going to be the best solution for you. Having said that, visuals are not exactly the strongest suit for this game, or for a lot of games from the N64 time period. That whole polygonal revolution, whatever you want to call it, it does have a tendency to not hold up as well. And this game, it does kind of hurt it visually a little bit more than, say, other games that were on the N64. Things like Mario 64, Zelda Ocarina of Time. I feel like, yeah, there was polygonal aspects to them, but I think they didn't look as pronounced as this game does. In fact, there's certain parts in this game, like the beginning of Scene 3, that whole set of missions, where, like the main character Saki here, or one of the main characters, I was like, what the heck am I even looking at here? It just looked really, really odd. But then again, because of the story, it may have looked that way on purpose. But overall, it's a decently good looking game from that time period, but it obviously is dated for sure, to say the least. If you can look past the visuals, and for me, visuals aren't the end all and be all of things for games. From that perspective, I can look past it and just enjoy the gameplay for what it is. And I think you can as well, especially if you're a big fan of the N64 style graphics. If you actually like that style of graphics and whatnot, then I think you'll like this game quite a bit. Now, let me go ahead and just talk about sound quality. I mean, I think the sound quality is pretty good. I don't think the soundtrack was anything really stand out, at least in my personal opinion. Not like some of the other Treasure games, which I felt like the soundtrack was a lot better, some of the ones that I played back on the Genesis. So I think that, I wouldn't say it's a bad soundtrack. I just think, from the standard that they set for the Genesis, a lot of their games, that this one is, to a certain extent, a little bit of a letdown. So it's more just mediocre, in my personal opinion. Not bad, maybe not even just moderate, but in comparison to some of their other soundtracks, I feel like they did a much better job on the Genesis games that I played. But it's decent. It's not bad. The voice acting, on the other hand, I mean, you kind of expect the voice acting to be a little bit cheesy from this time period of games, to say the least. But it's kind of weird in the fact that the voices don't match some of what you hear in the game. Like the Saki, this character, like his jumping and things of that nature, when you hear the protagonist speak, you're like, wow, he has such a much higher pitched voice compared to his jumping voice, as it were. So it's kind of odd, but yeah, I guess, like I said, it's that time period and kind of what you expect with the voice acting from the time period. It's okay. It's not great. I guess there are worse voice acting or voiceovers, to say the least, but it's interesting. I feel like it just sounds out of place at times. The story for the game, that's another thing. It's straight out of some of the crazier animes from the 90s. Like, it's just a really out there story. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's almost like the story is not really, it's let's have an excuse to blow things up. All right, there you go. And just from like some of the other animes of the time, just some of the really weird ones that were very psychological weird type animes. It definitely borrows heavily from those tropes, to say the least. So take that as you will. But overall, I'd say the gameplay is actually very good, and that's really the strong point of the game. But at the same point, it's a very unique style of play, because it's not just a rail shooter. You're also on foot, and you have dodge mechanics and rolling mechanics and jumping and all that thing. So it's a lot different than, say, Star Fox, which would be another big Nintendo 64 rail shooter that you could definitely compare it to. It's not just flying around and shooting things. You also have to deal with some foot movement and things of that nature. And it's not really a run and gun shooter, except for really one scene of the game where it actually does kind of turn into a run and gun shooter, and it does kind of take you by surprise, like, wait, I've been just moving straight forward the whole time, and now all of a sudden I've got to actually press forward. So it is kind of surprising from that perspective when you do encounter it. But the game itself it's a very unique control setup, and originally took heavy inspiration from the N64 controller, and it's very apparent in the menus where you see how everything is set up for the game. It's very apparent that they took that controller design into heavy consideration. Again, I think that's one of the benefits of being able to emulate it on your PC, is that you can modify the controls to fit your playstyle much better, because you can get in there and actually change things more easily. Again, like I said, another pro for emulating it on your PC as compared to playing it on the Nintendo Switch. I mean, I don't want to sound like this is a big dunking on the Nintendo Switch session, but it kind of really is when it comes to this game in particular, for certain. Just the control, being able to modify the controls to suit your style, is a big benefit to emulating it this way. Now, originally this game, like I said, came out in Japan, and we never got it over here in America until much later, when I know for sure it was on the Wii U eShop. I don't know if it was, or the Virtual Console as it were. I don't know if it was on the Wii Virtual Console or the Wii Shop channel, but it definitely was on the Wii U. So it came around somewhere in that time period, either the Wii or the Wii U for absolute certain. And maybe that was for the best, because this game obviously has nothing to do with, say, Dynamite Headdy, but I will say there's a obvious difference in difficulty. And the reason why I say it's probably a good thing we didn't get it translated back in the days, because Treasure, when they took out Dynamite Headdy on the Genesis, it was much easier than what we got in North America. And so I have a feeling that had this game come out and they brought it over to North America, it would have been, the default difficulty level would have been normal. And the reason why I say that's a problem is because there's a noticeable increase in difficulty when you go from easy to normal. The easy difficulty itself is not easy. There is definitely some challenge, and you've got to figure out the nuances for all the different bosses and the way the game is played. In fact, I think a lot of times the issue I have with this is not so much getting beat by the enemies, but getting beat by the time. As you almost saw, it's just, coincidence that you almost saw me run out of time right then, not so much life. That's interesting coincidence there. And the thing is like, if you get hit, that interrupts your attack flow by such a significant amount of time that you lose several, very vital seconds on the clock. And that's another thing. So it's more of a race against time than so much avoiding damage per se. And that gets much more pronounced on the normal difficulty. which is what you're seeing me play in the background, actually. I did try this on normal as compared to playing it on easy, and the increase in difficulty is quite substantial, to say the least, to the point where there are certain areas in the game which may not actually get to here in this video, where you have to be very precise with your shots and everything. I wouldn't say dang near perfect, but pretty dang close, to say the least. And if the bosses definitely, and a lot of, not even just the bosses, a lot of the sub bosses, some of the normal creatures or characters in the game, they definitely swap things up very substantially on you. Different types of attacks that weren't there on the easy difficulty, so it definitely is noticeable, the increase in difficulty from easy to normal. And I can only imagine how crazy the hard difficulty would be. And this kind of, like I said, goes back to some of those earlier Treasure games where they were actually quite difficult for their release here in North America. And at least with easy, you have a good chance of actually being able to get through the whole game and see everything. Normal is a little bit more on the it's very challenging, to say the least. I've only gone through it once, but I have a feeling that even going through it once, I would still be quite challenged to get through normal. And that's nothing to say for how bad hard could theoretically be, which I assume is pretty dang bad. But, you know, I do like playing these games, not only this way because you get better controls, better visuals, but you can also link up with your Retro Achievement account and get achievements. And from that perspective, they have a very good achievement set for this game, one that's going to be very difficult to master or even get halfway through. I don't know if I'm actually going to have the patience to even try that, to be completely honest with you. But the game is a good game. Just keep in mind, if you go to normal or whatnot, the ramp up in difficulty is quite substantial. So don't feel too insulted to try and play it on the easy mode. It actually isn't very easy, but it will actually let you enjoy the game and figure things out without being too frustrating like some of the other difficulties. So I don't know, let me see. I think I've pretty much touched on just about every aspect of the game that I can think of. And I think that overall, this isn't what I would consider the best Treasure game out there. I feel like there was other games that they put out on the Genesis that I've played that were better games. But at the same token, I wouldn't say it's their worst game either. It's probably, you know, a little bit above average. And so I think I'm going to give it a score of 85%. I feel like it's not frustrating, the easy difficulty. It really isn't frustrating once you figure out the tricks, as it were. And then from there, it's actually a pretty fun game. It doesn't really start to get frustrating until you hit normal difficulty and you think, this shouldn't be this difficult, especially once you get to the second set of stages or scenes, as they're called. From there, it starts to ramp up the frustration quite a bit. And yeah, I'm glad that there is an easy difficulty, and that does help things out a little bit so that you can actually enjoy it. And if you really want the challenge, it's there for you as well, so keep that in mind. But overall, I think 85% is a good score for this game. I don't think I would recommend playing it on the Nintendo Switch. Maybe in handheld mode it wouldn't look so bad, but I figure if you're going to play it on a TV or something of that nature, it would look much more washed out, probably closer to a standard N64. Whereas this game, I mean, it's not visually jaw-dropping or anything when you upscale it and things of that nature, but it does look good, and it's a noticeable visual improvement. I think that alone makes it worth emulating, just so you can get a slightly better looking game. which these games from this time period, I feel they do need it more often than not in some cases. Anyway, that's it for my thoughts on the game. It's definitely worth your time, especially if you're a fan of the N64 and rail shooters, or both. Then this game is definitely going to be right up your alley. And overall, it's not too long of a game. You can get through it all in a couple of hours on the easy mode. Not necessarily on hard mode. That one's a little bit of a different story altogether, to say the least. But I think definitely it's a good challenge and a good time on easy and worth your time. Anyway, that'll do it for this video. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.